when you love something and you no longer have access to it, the feeling, what you feel.
Yeah.
That's grief. Yeah.
I wasn't trying to feel the feelings of like what I was experiencing was grief and loss of a relationship that mattered a lot to me.
When you're in the heat of just like a fresh loss, there's so many different things that you can want at the same time that won't necessarily make sense to people, but you'll find your people that get you and allow you to be who you need to be.
I love that so much because in as much as we want to learn and grow from something, I think that it's important to note that learning and growing from grief is also a decision one has to make, right?
Feeling that kind of grief allows me to regulate the other things that I should really be letting go of. What's healing?
What is healing in that context anyway?
Yeah.
So let's get into it. What is grief in your definition, if in your own words?
So the one thing I read somewhere, and I can't remember it word for word, that I think resonated with me the most about what grief is really when you love something and you no longer have access to it, the feeling, what you feel.
Yeah.
That's grief. So in the beginning, it made it easier for me to wear my grief because it meant that what I had lost or what I had felt was a good thing. So then grief is it's not all bad because it's the result of a very amazing thing, which is what I felt with my parents.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that I've settled on as what grief is.
And how would you say like grief manifests within a person?
I think for me, the major way in which I see grief is in the way I relate with people. So it's manifested in the fact that because I know that it's love that will eventually turn into grief.
Yeah.
I'm very particular about who I love.
Right.
Who I give that
access,
time and access and space to. So it's maybe more emotional or more, I'm either more attached or more detached, depending on who it is and whether I'm allowing you into that space.
Yeah, I think that there's this misconception that once someone wants access to you, and I see this a lot, especially women sort of feeling the pressure to sort of allow people in, allow situations in, to just be super agreeable and sort of engage that. And it's really interesting. I was like one of my morning jogs with my husband one time, and literally everybody we passed, he greeted. And not that I don't greet, I greet, but it was really, he was greeting everybody along the path. And there was a very shady looking person, random looking person, after he greeted them, was begging for money on. And he's like, oh, I don't, we just went for a morning walk. We're not really carrying anything. And I kept on walking. And he asked me, he was like, I noticed when we go on these walks, like you're like looking straight ahead. You don't stop. You don't say anything. And I was like, you're a man. Like, you have the privilege of greeting everybody on the road without someone thinking you're being friendly enough for access. And sometimes I also realize that in society, socially, as a woman, it's not always safe to be that nice and have that openness. But I'm going off topic anyway. So we've talked a little bit of stages of grief, and I love how you said it doesn't apply to me, because I always, rather than looking at grief or the stages of grief as sort of like this pyramid where you move from like
a flow chart.
Yeah, look at it more cyclical, right? Yeah. Grief is cyclical. It comes and goes in cycles. It ebbs and flows. It comes and goes in waves, right?
Absolutely.
So like, how does that manifest in your life? Like you said that sometimes it comes back. Like you have moments where you remember that, oh, this person is no longer with me.
Yeah. I would say that there's and again, because I've lost both my parents, it's different for both of them. And that's why I say it doesn't apply to me, because the steps that they will tell you are different for my dad, different for my mom. I think that different situations will trigger different things. For me, one of the stages is depression, right?
Yeah.
For me, that is, I want to say that that's the one I'm most afraid of. Just because I've had an experience with a family member who's been through clinical depression.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's also one of the things that motivates me to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And motivates me to listen to myself, and motivates me to regulate the different feelings around this.
And as far as the different stages go, which one do you feel like you spent the most time at? So it goes denial, bargaining, anger, depression, acceptance.
Okay. Maybe we should take them one at a time.
One at a
time. So the first one is what? Bargaining. No. Denial. Sometimes there's numbness when things happen.
Yeah.
So that definitely didn't come first, but I think that at different times you go to the denial, you feel numb just to keep you going. I think definitely when I was planning my mother's funeral, I wouldn't call it denial, but it was just, I knew it had happened and I was busy.
It was adjacent,
Yes. I would say more numbness.
Numbing, right. Which I guess it's on a spectrum, I guess, if one wants to consider it that way. And then there's bargaining.
Because I've never really felt that, no, this didn't happen or this isn't real. Like, I've never been in a place of denial. Maybe, so funny story, just what happened was with my mom, we were asked to come to the hospital, but I knew as soon as we were asked to come to the hospital, there was something in me that knew. So I had a big cry.
Yeah.
Huge cry. My husband is like, no, we're going to the hospital. Right. I didn't say to him I knew. I felt it. So we get in the car, and the whole time we're going there, that's maybe when I was bargaining. But it doesn't really make sense because I already knew. But I was praying and saying, oh God, have mercy on me. Let me not be the situation. So it's not straightforward. It's not linear at all. With my dad, I think that there wasn't much bargaining because I think that the way my mind works, it's very practical, very A, B, C, this is what's happening. I think leading up to it, I realized that this is going to be what is going to happen. So do you really bargain then? So I can't say that I'm very, bargaining is not like one of the big ones for me. So we've done denial, we've done bargaining, anger.
I stay at anger the longest, just that's my stage. I don't
think that's one of my main ones too.
Oh yeah?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't feel angry that this has happened. I think maybe my faith helps with that.
Okay.
I think that maybe my faith helps with that. So I do know that God does things according to his purpose. So it's not something that I feel angry about. I'm sad. I'm disappointed. I wish it could be different. I understand that it is not. So maybe that's acceptance.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't make me not miss my parents. It doesn't not make me wish they were here. But I get it. I get that they're not.
Yeah.
And also another thing that I think puts me in that frame of mind is that I truly see death as healing. Right? Like, as Christians, you pray to God when someone is sick, oh, heal the person. But really, sometimes death is God's way of healing a person. And so, anger, no. But definitely, I remember that all the time, that sometimes God heals through death.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the ultimate healing. Yeah. So.
Death is gain.
Could be, yes.
Right. Yeah. And two,
but also not in that biblical way, but just in terms of physiologically, like in the hospital, when the person is sick and is struggling, sometimes God says, it's enough, actually. When I look at this in the grand scheme of things, this is the best way I feel to free you from this pain that you feel.
Yeah.
When I think about my mom and the kind of person that she was, my mom died of COVID. And if it was something that would change her life and would make her not as strong as she used to be, or not able to do the things that she used to do, she would not have a happy life.
Yeah.
I think for me, honestly, I do feel like it was just like, well done. Like you may recover, but you may not have the life that you are accustomed to that keeps you going. And what kind of life would that be? So, yeah.
It's kind of interesting because part of the reason I even asked you here, I mean, I rarely go on Instagram anymore these days, but I happened to log on for one reason or another, and I saw your post. And I immediately was like, oh, I have to have Jane on this discussion, because I think for me, healing past anything, I think one of the hardest things that people can imagine, and even myself imagining, is moving on from grief. And it's possible to grieve from multiple things at the same time. And that's why I definitely connect with you when you said you don't connect with the stages of grief. One, it's cyclical. It doesn't go from one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And two, you may very well accept that somebody or something is no longer with you, but still mourn the loss of the relationship, or the loss of something that you shared because of that thing or that person being in your life. So in your post, on your caption, you said that my grief will never leave me. It has changed me. I carry it with a little bit more ease now. I know my parents would be proud, which tear definitely brought some misty eyes into my eyes. And you said that when people ask you when you get over it, your answer is, you hope never.
Yeah.
I mean, that is such a different response to a question about grief.
I mean, so if you get over it, then does that mean you've gotten over the fact that the people aren't here with you anymore? I think, and like I said earlier, right, grief is a direct response to the fact that you love them so much, right? So you should carry them with you. You carry the parts that you've lost with you. And those things are part of your makeup. They're part of the things.
Grief is a reminder of the love that you share.
Absolutely. It's only there because you have the love in the first place, right? Yes. And I think that the reason why I'm okay with this is also because feeling that kind of grief allows me to regulate the other things that I should really be letting go of.
Yeah.
You've lost the ultimate. What else can happen?
Yeah.
Right? What's the worst that can happen? It lets you let go of people that are not good for you, even parts of yourself that you have to let go of. I think it gives you the freedom to do that. There was something that Chimamanda said. I just remembered. Again, I can't remember it.
Because she also lost her parents in a short amount of time.
And she said, the parents aren't there anymore to make you be like, oh, cool on that. I'm about to be a mad woman, right? I just, it frees you. There's something about it that frees you. Not because your parents were not freeing, no. But it's just, it reminds you of what's important. It reminds you that you're only here for a limited time. I found it to be, in some ways, liberating. Yeah. It guides my choices of people I let into my space. It guides my choices of what I do with my time. It even guides the choices on who I bring into my space with my family, my children, my husband. It's a strong force, and I think that it could destroy you or make you better.
Yeah.
And of course, the people that you surround yourself with that help you to come out of the place of what grief is well known for, that dark place of just crying and rolling on the floor. I think it also makes a difference in how you empower yourself with that grief.
100%. I love that. I love that so much, because in as much as we want to learn and grow from something, I think that it's important to note that learning and growing from grief is also a decision one has to make, right?
Absolutely.
And so I'm curious to know, like, did you make the decision to be like, I'm going to learn from grief? Or was it very much like a natural progression based on just like your pre-wiring?
I think it's a big part of it is who I am. A big part of it is the support I had. So I will say that at the time my father passed, I wasn't married yet.
Yeah.
But my husband was very, very supportive.
Yeah.
My husband, my mom, and my brother.
Right.
Right. I think that we really sort of, and it was a very confusing time because another thing that grief has shown me is the true meaning of family.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's not.
Who's your tribe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's, and I learned that very quickly when my father passed, that you will see the people who are for you. And so I think it's also the love that they show you and the support that they show you.
Yeah.
It gives you something to live for. It gives you something to realize that a part of your life has changed, but there's still great, amazing parts of your life that you should keep going for. Yeah. So it's a decision, but it's not made easily. And I think that you're encouraged. If you're encouraged by the people around you and the life that you could possibly have, you want to keep going.
Yeah. I think I love that you mentioned support, because I think that sometimes we always want to tell people, oh, it's okay, you get, don't be too down on yourself. And it's also very important to let grief pass through you.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, let it do what it does. Let it pass through you. And I think that sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves to sort of be at this healed place, or like
we get over it,
or we define what healing is. We put it in a box, right? Mm-hmm. And then we say, oh, unless I'm there, I'm not healed.
Yes.
Only to find out that it's all cyclical and it comes and goes and it goes in rounds and rounds.
And that's why I don't believe in the steps, because the last step is acceptance. So people, and I think that that's really what makes people think that that's how it works.
Yeah.
Because then when you get to acceptance, the idea is that you're not going back.
You're not going back.
But no, honey, it's coming back.
In a different way.
In a different way, in a circumstance that you would not even think.
Yeah.
You know, something that makes me sad every single time when I walk into a new restaurant in Accra or anywhere else. Because that was my dad and that was our thing.
Wow.
Anytime a new place opened, he would be like, we would take him there. He would love it. Go back there with his friends.
Exactly.
So it used to be really difficult for me. But now every time I sit in a new place, I look around and I try to think, what would he like? Would it be the wine list? Would it be the look of the place? And I wonder what the conversation would be like. It's not so debilitating anymore.
Yeah.
But it's sort of become like a sweet memory.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So like, rather than, I guess, like looking at it as stages, we look at it more of as like an evolution that gets like, the process gets refined as time goes on. Yep. So it goes from this debilitating grief, this sadness. I remember about a year ago, I had sort of a falling out with a very close friend, like sisters, right? Like, and to be fair, just because there's a falling out does not mean the love is gone. And it does not mean that the sisterhood is no longer there. It just means that the relationship looks different now, has changed. And for a very long time, I had a lot of anger around how sort of the fallout was managed. And I kept trying to deny myself of feeling a sense of loss. And so it made the anger linger longer because I was always like, man, I'm good. Like,
you have to feel it. Yeah.
I wasn't trying to feel the feelings of like what I was experiencing was grief and loss of a relationship that mattered a lot to me. And sometimes what you're grieving is, yes, the loss of the friendship. You're also grieving the loss of who you used to be with that person. You're also grieving the loss of who that person meant to you. You're also mourning the loss of like the image of the person that you kept in your mind.
And not to cut you off or not to interrupt, you're also actually grieving all the things that you thought, because all the things in the future that you
wouldn't
could
be
possibly be and could not be. I'm actually going through something similar right now where I have gotten to the point where I realize that a friendship is over.
Yeah.
It hasn't been communicated yet in so many words, but I think that is, first of all, I'm allowing it to happen because of the grief I felt. I think I'm in a better position to handle these things.
Yeah.
It's why I can have the honest conversation about it. It's why I can regulate my emotions around it. It's why I won't be angry, or I won't just look at it in a negative light. And it is sad because a lot has happened. A lot could happen. When I think about what the friendship is, I imagined us being in each other's lives in a particular way forever. And it's okay that it's not going to be the case. But if I definitely hadn't been through this grief experience, I don't know that I would have such a good grasp on this current situation. Yeah. And I think that what loss in that way does and how it translates is it helps you to navigate difficult situations much better. If you allow yourself to do the work and you recognize your emotions and recognize the way you also, and apart from recognizing emotions, what's also very important is recognizing the way things affect you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's very,
the awareness is there, and also the bounce back gets easier. So a friend recently lost her grandmother's very old, lived a beautiful life, and recently lost her grandma, and was like, well, this is the first ever experience I've had of a big loss in my family. She's like, hopefully it gets easier from here. I was like, So here's the thing. It's still going to like hit you in the face. It's still going to feel like a ton of bricks fell on you, especially if you love the person. But the bounce back, in my opinion, feels easier.
I don't know that it does.
Okay.
I don't know that it does because it depends on the relationship with the person. I thought, how do I explain this? So, I felt like my bounce back from my mom was easier than from my dad until I was told that I was going to be having a daughter on the same day that my mother passed.
Oh, wow.
Right? That it took me back again.
Yeah.
So, no, I think it's just, there's no formula. It doesn't work one way or another.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you just have to be open to allowing the feelings and acknowledging the feelings and working through the feelings. I'm coming up on 5 years of my dad passing.
And it seems like crazy. It's half a decade.
Crazy.
That's half a decade.
Crazy.
It's a lot.
But I talk to myself about it where I say to myself, this is what's happening. It's coming on 5 years since you last actually saw, we're in the same space, breathe the same air as your actual father.
Yeah.
5 whole years to not be with the person. And I have no expectations. I don't put any expectations on myself on how I'm going to feel, how I'm going to mark the day.
Yeah.
I'm really just allowing myself to feel the feels and just be sad about it.
Yeah.
And think about all the things that could have been. My father never met my children.
Yeah.
That is such a big thing. I think that it chokes me sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
It's heavy.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and it's even worse now because my children have lost their only other grandfather.
Yeah.
And it's just Yeah.
Yeah.
So when that happened, when my father-in-law passed, that was my first thoughts. Oh my goodness, I have no grandfathers to present to my children. It's just the little things that really will break you down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just like it just goes to show you just like the complexity and the nuances that exist in human relationships.
Yep.
Right. And in human emotions and human interactions, that on one end, you can accept that your father is gone, but then reconciling that with your children's experience with a grandparent, all of a sudden brings it home in another way.
Yeah.
And it just speaks back to what we were talking about, grief being a constant sort of cycle, and sort of maybe, and sitting on this couch, I'm kind of making revelations based on your observations and based on your experience. I think I spent all my life trying to heal from grief, or I mean, what do I even mean by heal from
What
grief?
does that even mean?
Yeah, what does that even mean, right? Like I guess like not have it. So like I want my relationship with grief to like not exist, right? Where I'm just like, I'm not grieving, and I'm not grieving this anymore.
But if you're not grieving it, then how are you honoring the thing that was, right? And that's why I'm okay for it to never leave me.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have the grief from it, people say, oh, you have the memories. But then the grief isn't always me crying and being sad.
And like being like so forth. And I think maybe what it is that we need to re-engage grief, like the word grief, right? Where I think grief sounds, it's a negative term.
Exactly.
And it's the big bad. When she's like, oh, she's still grieving. It's like, hey, so now you're grieving this thing. And it's like, well, maybe we need to like reassess our relationship with the word grief.
And that's why I said, for me, it's like the mirror of love.
Yeah.
That can't be a bad thing.
It can't be a bad thing.
Exactly. If something mirrors love, then
you always grieve it.
Yeah.
Because it's not there.
Yes. And so that's why, yes, okay, this is healing from grief, but also what is the actual healing? I think that it's coming to a place where it's, for me, I think it's made me who I am, and I love who I am. I love who I have become.
As a result of what grief has given you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of those things is, I guess, why the stages is important is because you have to accept it. I definitely think denial is not a good way to go about it. You can have bits and pieces of denial, like, oh man, I wish like my mom was here, or I wish my dad was here. What's healing?
What is healing in that context anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Why are we even here? Why?
No, but it's important to talk about it, I think, because like you're saying, it becomes the big bad.
Yeah.
And it's important to dispel that. You know, there is life after, there are other things. And I think that a lot of people lose things, not things. A lot of people lose either people or relationships or even parts of themselves. And they can't really look in the mirror and say, this has happened. What next? Right. Another thing that I feel I have lost, and it's actually very, I find it's very sad for me, is I lost the potential relationship with my mother-in-law. She's alive. My mother-in-law is alive, but she's unwell. And she's been unwell it's coming on 3 years now. It's past 3 years, I'm sorry. But because of her illness, we are unable to become the daughter and mother-in-law that I had envisioned.
Right.
It's very painful for me.
Yeah. And that's
and it's difficult to sort of even talk about, because it's almost like, why are you complaining? At least she's still here, right? But then it's not. We had started, just like planning the wedding and spending time together. I used to spend every Sunday with her.
Yeah.
That was something. It was something that was important to me. It was something that I was looking forward to doing. And I don't have that anymore. It was taken away from me. And that is something I also grieve. I think even more so than my parents, because this is something that she's still here. So
Tangible.
it's tangible.
Wow.
It's almost in my reach, but it's out of my reach.
Yeah.
So there are lots of things that you grieve.
It's not always like and I think it's very important that you bring that up, because I think that the moment you say somebody's grieving, there's immediately our minds go to, did they lose a person? Like, did somebody die?
Yes. And to interrupt, people don't allow themselves to go through that process of grieving until it's a death. And so they don't properly process things that happen that deserve the time and the effort to actually work on. I don't want to say heal from. Work on, you know.
Or grow with.
Go through. Yes. So
that is
also
so
that
real.
loss of a business.
The loss of a
my brother and I, my mother started a business and my brother and I are winding up.
Yeah.
And it's a loss.
Yeah.
It's a deep loss.
It's been with you your entire life.
I feel it.
Yeah.
And so I'm working through the feelings. Yeah. And I don't know that I would have known to do this if I hadn't gone through the losses I have. So
that is so real, because I think a lot of us hold on to a lot of things because of the fear of grief.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of us hold on to a lot of, whether it's like a relationship that's not good for you, whether it's a job that no longer serves sort of like your destiny, your purpose, but letting go. And also, I remember being very upset. I would say when I was 27, I had a nervous breakdown. I kept mourning the person I used to be, this person who wasn't switched on, right? Because after that nervous breakdown, I went to therapy. I started reading the books. I started becoming aware. I started becoming vulnerable. But I still grieved the person who wasn't sad, because before it got better, it got worse, right? So I was grieving this carefree person who didn't seem to have issues, who didn't seem to, I was really
right there with you.
Right. Like the pre-nervous breakdown version of me, I really wanted that person back.
I also really grieved the person I was before 21st November 2018, which is when my father died. I feel like two completely different people.
Yeah.
I sometimes see little hints of her, and I'm just like, life was I was so different.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not that person anymore. Yeah.
And to jump in again, how about, because we both have small children, we both have parents of very small children.
Yes.
How?
I know exactly what it is. No, but sometimes I take that back.
You take that back.
No, I take that. Listen, I'm a mom, I'm your mom, but I'm also...
So Jane, and it's like, I found myself really grieving, even like the person I was like before I got married.
Yes.
Like, because the person I was before, I had people in my life that I care for, be it like my household, my husband and my kids, how I was just getting up and going and living life. And now, I was talking to my mom, I was like, you invite me to anything, the first thing I ask myself or the other person who's asking me to come is, what is the childcare situation? If I don't have childcare, I can't do it. It's not a matter of I don't want to do it. It's literally I can't do it.
Yes.
And there are and it doesn't happen every day. It happens every now and then where you kind of, for me, a little bit. I have moments where I'm like, I sometimes miss her.
Yes.
But then again,
I think that it's important to allow yourself to miss her, and actually to give yourself a little bit of time where you can be her as well. Mm-hmm. If the people around you that care about you and understand you, know that that's a part of you.
Yeah.
It may not be your everyday, but it's definitely all of it comes together to make you who you are. All those experiences.
Exactly.
And so I definitely find myself having those little
Pockets,
children Jane times. Recently, a friend of mine from high school, actually one of my best friends from high school, and I had like a night out.
Yeah.
Where she came over, we went to have dinner, and we went to a place where they actually played Ghanaian music only from like our
era
school,
right?
Times. And it sort of took me back, and it was a nice thing to have. Yes. But you see, I think that some people don't have people in their lives that will rally around them to make sure that they can have that time. Some people have friends that say, oh, I'm not calling her because she's married and she has children and she won't come, or their partners won't stay at home.
Yeah.
And, but I definitely, in my life, I'm very grateful for the people who allow me to still have a little bit of just me.
And like life and...
Shout out to my husband and my brother, actually, because my husband planned a whole vacation.
Oh, lovely.
Where I would actually have just a week with my friend, just me and her. He was also joining me a week after. But I thought it was very thoughtful of him to have me go ahead, because the vacation just can't be about me and you, because there's also just a Jane as well that needs to be Jane, which was great. And my brother stepped up and took care of our kids. We were gone for 2
weeks. Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah. So I think that that's also important. And you have, first of all, you have to allow yourself and surround yourself with people who will allow you to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So. And I think that goes for all manner of loss. I think that for people who don't have the familial units to step in and step up and fill in those spaces, it can be very dark and lonely.
Yeah.
I really, my heart and my thoughts and, really goes out to folks who don't have that in their immediate sort of calling. They can't immediately call on spaces like that. And that's why I always say that like grief and healing or growth happens in community.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And like as an introvert, that took me a while to like come to, because I used to spend so much time alone in my head trying to figure out how to get over something, only to find out like the people that I need people. Like I just roll up at my sister's house just because, like, just be like, I'm here, I'm sitting on your couch, I'm not leaving. I'm sitting here until whenever, and I'm dumping my kids on you, or whatever the case is, because I have that. Like I'm grateful to have that.
Absolutely. And that's why I keep talking about my brother, because there's a lot of, my brother is not married, doesn't have children.
Yeah.
It's not his life.
Yeah.
But guess what? It's your life, because he helps me a lot with that. I think that the people definitely make a difference. I can sit here and talk about healing, growing through all of that, but I cannot say that I did this by myself.
Yeah.
I cannot. Again, I think just going back to being a woman of faith, I think that God also just put things together in such a way. For instance, one thing that really helped me was I had like a group of girls, my friend, we were praying about something completely different at the time that my father passed. And that was it made the landing softer.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, the people, if you're talking about healing through grief, it's also your people.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do for yourself, and you have to do the work. But it's definitely made easier. It's definitely made better when you have the people to help you through.
Like, I told you, it will go faster than you think.
Yeah, I think talking about things, even just talking about this, it helps.
Yeah.
It puts things in perspective. It reminds you of the fact that you need people, you need connections, and there's not one way to think about something, or one way to heal through something, or one way to discover how you can move forward.
And also like letting it flow through you. It hurts.
Yeah.
Say it hurt.
Yes.
And have the people around you who can receive it when you say it hurt.
Yes.
I think that's the one thing that I have become very good at, is knowing who I can present my pain to.
yes, that's also important. But
Yeah.
we've talked about people, but also I think that you also have to get to a place where you can be honest with yourself.
100%.
Of what it is that you're feeling. And, if you can't do that, how can you even express it to people?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the whole, there's something that people say to me, oh, Jane, you're so strong. Or I find it not funny, but I find it like,
you resent it a little bit.
I do. Yes, sometimes I do. I do, especially when, and I think I mentioned this earlier, especially when people say, like when someone has lost someone and then they come to you and they're like, oh, since you've been, it's like, since you're like the class prefect of this, what am I supposed to do? Like, it's true part, it's annoying.
Yeah.
But I also sometimes feel like responsible to help people who are going through loss. But then it also makes me feel very, very helpless.
Yeah.
When I was pregnant with Nana, a good friend of mine lost her dad.
Yeah.
And when I found out, I broke down. It was so many things that got me. But it was just the fact that I now felt like I could feel, I had a sense of what she would feel. And not even for me. I just felt so bad for her. And I wanted to help her. Yeah. And I didn't know what to do.
Yeah. And in a weird way,
I couldn't help her. I knew she would have to actually go through this deeply painful experience. And I think that
empathy, what you're experiencing was empathy.
Every single time that somebody loses a parent, that's what I feel. I always break down.
Knowing that person would never be the same again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not even,
for themselves.
I can't do, it makes me feel very helpless because I can't actually do anything for you.
I can't grieve for you. I can't make it hurt less.
I can't even tell you what to do. I wish there was a big Band-Aid I could throw over you. I wish there was a way I could protect them.
Yeah.
Yes. It's very, I think every time people see, again, I just remembered when I was also pregnant with Nana, somebody very close to our family passed.
Yeah.
And when I was told, I was just crying. And they were like, oh, no, don't cry. You're pregnant. You're not supposed to cry when you're,
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell them why I was crying. I wasn't literally sad that the person had passed. Because I think I've learned to be okay with the actual physiological thing that has happened of the person not being there anymore. But I feel I remember the deep loneliness, that's the word. Oh my God, loneliness that you feel, And even though it's happened now to so many people around me, my husband has lost his dad. But I think we're both very lonely in that loss.
Yeah.
I don't think that I can tell you I know how he feels. I haven't, and that's another thing. I don't ever try and put
what you went through
feelings on anybody. Oh, I'm sure you feel this way. No, I'm not sure you feel anyway because I do not know how you feel. We may have had similar things happen to us, but I know that and I think because I've lost both parents and with both people, the feeling is different. I don't ever assume for anybody. And I think that, you learn as you go along.
It's like, and what you're saying reminds me, I remember years and years ago, when I was processing my own sort of, I was like just freshly in therapy. I was just having a new relationship with feelings. And I went to a friend's mother's funeral. And she was insistent that she was okay. She needed to be strong. And I remember looking at her almost aggressively, be like, feel your feelings.
Yeah.
And, folks being around me be like, Kunma, what are you doing? She says she's fine. Don't put pressure on her to feel her feelings. It's okay if she doesn't want to feel right now.
Yes.
And when you were saying what you're saying about people sort of not projecting sort of your process of healing on someone else and sort of allowing folks to experience healing in their body, in their space, for what it means for them and where it takes them and feelings passing through. That's an important journey. That's an important lesson for someone who may not be experiencing like grief, but knowing how to sort of approach somebody who's experiencing that.
And I do hope that people learn that from this conversation, because I think that some of the are you okay, some of the things that people do, it comes from a good place.
Yeah.
But I think that people just are only thinking about it one way.
Yeah.
And they need to give the people room to be and to change and to go through.
And I think sometimes we don't really know what to do or say, right? So I remember when I was in uni, a very, very, very close friend of ours, I went to university in the US, and so African students have a way of finding each other. And one a very good friend of mine, his fiance committed suicide on campus. Like while we were on winter break, we came back, and this is the news that we came to, and they were engaged. They were going to get married. And I remember not like for some time I was secretly not avoiding, but just being very much like, I don't want to see, because he's the nicest person in the world. And I didn't know how I was even going to be able to like exchange with him. And like, I was so awkward, because I was like, what do I even say?
That's what you say. That
I don't know what to say.
I don't
know what to do. I'm just as
I
overcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think those were some of the message you sent me when I lost my dad was very honest, very not, oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, sometimes you even get tired of
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Guess what? I'm sorry too.
Yeah, right.
But the honest message is like, wow, I cannot believe you're going through this. You must be overcome with grief. And I just want you to know that I'm here for you.
Yeah.
It's just, you can tell the messages that are genuine.
Yeah.
Where the person actually is like, oh my God, wow, this is happening to somebody.
Yeah.
Versus the ones that are like, oh, okay, this is the message I send everybody.
To everybody who loses it. And what was that like?
And that's also okay.
That's okay too, because I think and because what ended up helping, this friend who had lost his fiance, and I was so like, I don't even know what to say. We finally went and got food from like some African restaurant, and was like, we just want to feed you. We don't know like what you're up to these days. Just come over, eat something. Part of what informed that was that my roommate at the time had lost her father a few years before that. And she said that when she lost her dad, everybody was so obsessed with saying, oh, sorry. Oh. But she just wanted to, she was also mourning how people saw her. Because she was like, now everybody just feels sorry for me. Exactly. And I want you to acknowledge that, yes, I've experienced a really terrible loss, but I also want you to just be with me, take me to my favorite restaurant, engage.
Semblance of a normal life.
Yes. She wanted her friends to pick her up and do the things they would do even if her father was still alive. And so when she said that, it gave us an idea. Okay, well, let's just have him over, have a nice little meal, and just chat it up. Everything doesn't have to be about this loss that he's experienced. Trust me, he's trying to get out of this. Because when she explained that to me, that he's probably sitting there trying to get out of this box.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm the guy whose fiance killed herself on campus. Like, that is me. And walking around with almost a scarlet letter of that. Yep. It's very likely that he wants to move away from that label as well. And so engage him as your friend who just, needs a friend. Who's like, hey, you know what? You need a friend right now. I'm here. Let's get something to eat and just laugh it up.
Absolutely. And I that kind of resonated with me, right after my mom's funeral.
Yeah.
So myself, my husband, my brother, his fiance, and a bunch of our friends went out of town to Ibri.
Right.
And we had just 3 days of us it was so chill.
Yeah.
There was lots of food. We played games. We had a great time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I feel like maybe culturally in Ghana, they don't expect you to have a great time.
Widows wear black for like the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was it helped me.
Yeah.
Because it was just a good time. It doesn't have to be one thing. you can be sad, but also laugh.
Yeah.
Right? You can be heartbroken, but also have a good time.
Yeah.
You know, it's you might want to be alone, but also want to have people around you.
Right.
It just, for me, is a reflection of the complexity of the human
relationship,
human person. Even, you know, when you're in the heat of just like a fresh loss, there's so many different things that you can want at the same time that won't necessarily make sense to people, but you'll find your people that get you and allow you to be who you need to be.
That is so profound.
And I think, and even with me, I think that like after the loss of my parents, I become a very difficult person. What people will call a difficult person, because it's just, this is how I want it to be, and I'm not going to change.
Like no nonsense.
Like it's not even about no nonsense, but this is where I am on it, and I'm okay with you not being okay with it. And people perceive that as difficult. Yeah. And I'm also okay with that, because I kind of know who I want to be now a little bit more. Yeah. So
that's incredibly profound, and thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. This has been an amazing discussion on grief, and I've taken so much from this discussion, and I'm going to take with me. And I think the most important thing I'm going to take with me is that grief is really a symptom or a representation of love. It is a symbol of a love that you may have shared. And so grief is a reminder that not only have we loved, but we're capable of big love. And that is the biggest takeaway I'm going to take from this conversation. So thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you for having me. This has been good. I don't shy away from talking about what I've been through. It's a part of me. I'm not hiding it or not wanting to live through it. It's a part of me. It goes with me everywhere. Yeah. And I think I'm better for it. So I'm happy to talk about it.
Thank you so much. Seriously, this has been mind-blowing and profound, and I've learned so much sitting across from you.
So have I.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's really, really been such a great
and it's good to have these conversations. So. I definitely think you can heal and hurt at the same time. If you try to separate the two, you would think that healing is final, hurt is final. But there's always an interplay between the two. And I think that the feelings that you get from being hurt by loss, by anything that you're grieving, is what really allows you to reassess. And that's what gets you to the point. Reassess how it affects you, how you want it to affect you, how you want it to hold on to your life. And then that's what helps you to heal.
Maybe let's talk a little bit about death. Just your thoughts on death as you know and how you experienced it.
Yeah, so I think that the main thing that I've come to learn about death is that I've come to accept about death is, like, I think I've said this before, that death is sometimes God's way of healing. Yeah. I think, and I always tell people this, the night my dad, it sounds so bad. Yeah. The night my dad died was the first time in a long time that I slept well. Not because I wasn't sad or I wasn't heartbroken, but finally it's like my prayers, there was an answer, something had happened. Because leading up to it, you don't know what's going to happen. You're always just waiting, you're always just anticipating. And sometimes I say to people that when people say things like, oh, you've been through so much, you're so strong, I think that God had mercy on me again, because both my parents' illnesses were very short. My dad was sick from the day he first said, oh, there's something wrong with me, to the day he died was about 6 weeks. My mom, 1 week. And I think about people who go through, and I think that the grieving process is probably very different for them, because they go through a long illness. Like when your parents go through they're ill for 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years sometimes. Right. And just it breaks you down. Even what I felt in a week, or my dad was in ICU for 9 days, or 9 days of not knowing, what's going to happen is it changes you. It breaks you down. And I see people, so when people say, well, I've been through so much, I feel like I've actually had it a bit easier than other people who had to go with the pain of the not knowing for so long. And I think that also, I didn't talk about this earlier, but also when you lose your parents, you're no longer somebody's child.
You lose that, yeah.
You know, like when you write a description of yourself, like, on Instagram, like your description, daughter, mother, wife. That's one of the things for me that was very painful. I don't have the covering of a parent anymore. I am nobody's child.
In the physical sense?
Yes.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of a friend who lost their only child. And one of the things that, it's like, I don't have a definer anymore.
You lose that identity.
As mother for decades, and
yes.
Now my child's gone. So she's poured a lot of that mothering into his friends. So like his girlfriend at the time that he passed, then his, the friends of the young man who died because of her need to mother.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's definitely a real part of the grief I felt. Like I have lost it. Till the time my parents died, I was somebody's child.
Yeah.
And then I'm no longer anybody's child. I've lost that. That's also, it's a loss of identity.
As well.
It really is a loss of identity. And I think that it's interesting. I started reading a book which is in 3 parts. And the reason why the book is in those 3 parts is because it sees those three things as really profound things that happen in a person's life. So it's called On Death, On Birth, and On Marriage. And for me, those 3 things happened in a really short period of time.
Yeah.
And so it's also a lot to sort of...
kind of like back to back.
Literally.
So like,
I lost my dad, then 6 months later I became a wife.
Yeah.
And then...
You had your son.
Then I had my son, and then I lost my mom 6 months later.
And
then a year later I had my daughter. So I think it's about 3 years. In 3 years, all these very emotional, very heavy things have happened. And in every single one, you actually lose something. A part of your identity changes, right? So I guess that's also part of the complexity of the grief and the losing and the changing and the healing and getting better.
I never know how to respond or to react to people's grief. It's almost as though I don't have any empathy when somebody tells me, oh, I've lost somebody. I always don't know how to react. I just stare at them, like very awkwardly, and I never know what to say. Is that the right thing to say? Is that the wrong thing to say? What do you do when you don't know what to do?
I think that when you're dealing with someone who's lost a loved one, the best thing to do, the only thing to do, is to be genuine. There's nothing right or wrong. As long as you're genuine and you approach the person with love and with care, it helps. And I think just be sensitive to the person's, how do you be sensitive when you actually haven't been through it yourself, right? That's the difficulty. But you can always tell when someone is genuinely expressing sympathy and they're not just saying, I'm sorry, or I heard about this and I'm sympathizing with you. Yeah.
And then you love saying, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think that sorry is a bit, whenever anybody said sorry to me, it was almost like, yeah, I'm sorry too, but I think that when people say, how are you feeling today?
How's your heart?
Yes, or even acknowledging that I know you are having a difficult time. I know that you are going through something that's deep. Or even saying, I cannot imagine what you're going through. I have never been there, but I just want to support you in any way that I can. Yeah. And also, I think that culturally, everybody makes, when someone dies, everybody makes it about the funeral. It's like when the funeral is over, then, hey, you're your own, you know? So I definitely felt comforted by the people who didn't just focus on the funeral. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna ask one more question because something dawned on me. That what would you say to someone who has their parents, in your specific case, you lost both parents in a short period of time, who has their parents in their lives, but maybe is processing that relationship, and that relationship may not be where they want it to be? How would you say that person should approach that relationship?
It's so interesting that you ask about that, because I just had this conversation with a friend maybe a week ago, and the scenario was that she's not happy. She's currently not in a good place with her dad, but she's also just had a baby. And I just found it so strange that she was holding on to the hurt, because I feel like life and death are so intertwined. You know, and when you've just experienced life, you want to make everything better. You want to make your relationships better. I think that it's difficult for me to speak generally on people's relationship with their parents. I was blessed to have a wonderful relationship with my parents. And some people are navigating parents who are actually not good for them, you know. But what I will say is that at this stage in our lives, the amount of time that you have left with your parents is much less than what you've already had. And so it's really up to you to take control of what you want it to be. I remember I posted when my father turned 60, and my father's 60th birthday was his last birthday. And it's almost like in hindsight, it's almost like I knew what was going to happen, because I actually said something along the lines of, the time I have left with you is a lot less than what I have had to this point. And so it was important for me to celebrate and to make good on, and make our relationship what I wanted it to be. And not because we had a bad relationship, we didn't, we had a great relationship, but I just felt like it was important for me to give it all that I had. Yeah. But also, another thing that I've learned through all of this is that your parents are actually, when they're getting older, they're also really they're being confronted with their mortality, right? So, just because of what you asked about how will I advise someone who's dealing with a relationship with their parents, is your parents are being confronted by their mortality. They're very aware that life is progressing. And you have to get to a place where you can see your parents for who they are, because it gets to a point where you realize that your parents don't actually know everything. They're not perfect. They make mistakes. They make some poor choices. But, you have to reconcile all of that and again, figure out what's important for you and how you want your relationship to progress. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.